The injunction to continue home life sometimes led to the objection that Sri Bhagavan himself had left his home. To this he would answer curtly that every man acts according to his prarabdha, his destiny. However, it does call for consideration that the full outer normality and participation in the daily routine of life, which Sri Bhagavan exemplified so perfectly in later years, and which he enjoined upon his followers, was not possible for himself immediately after the awakening at his uncle's house in Madurai. The answer is that what had become possible for Sri Bhagavan, he, by his grace, makes possible for those who follow him. To return to the mother, it was a severe training that she received. Often enough, Sri Bhagavan would ignore her, not answering when she spoke, although he took notice of others. If she complained, he would say, "All women are my mothers, not you only." One is reminded of Christ saying when he was told that his mother and brothers were standing at the edge of the crowd waiting to speak to him, "Whoever does the will of my Father who is in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." At first, Sri Bhagavan's mother would often weep with vexation, but gradually understanding developed in her. The feeling of superiority in being the mother of the Swami fell away. The sense of ego was weakened, and she devoted herself to the service of the devotees. Even now, he would still make fun of her orthodox scruples. If her sari happened to touch a non-Brahmin, he would exclaim in mock consternation, "Look, purity is gone. Religion is gone." The ashram food was strictly vegetarian, but Alagamal, like some very devout Brahmins, went still further and considered some vegetables as unsattvic or impure. And Sri Bhagavan would say mockingly, "Mind that onion. It is a great obstacle to moksha, deliverance." It should be said here that Sri Bhagavan did not disapprove of orthodoxy in general. In this case, there was excessive attachment to the forms of orthodoxy, and that was what he attacked. In general, he laid stress on the importance of sattvic, pure food. He did not often give any injunctions at all concerning outer activity. His usual method was to sow the spiritual seed in the heart and leave it to shape the outer life as it grew. The injunctions came from within. One Western devotee was an out-and-out meat-eater when he arrived, looking upon meat as the real substance of a meal, as well as the most tasty part, and with no word spoken on the subject, the time came when he felt an aversion to the very idea of eating meat. It should be explained in parentheses for non-Hindu readers that the practice of vegetarianism is not only out of disinclination to take life or eat flesh, though that is one reason for it. It is also because unsattvic food, which includes some kinds of vegetables as well as meat, tends to increase animal passions and impede spiritual effort. There were other ways also in which the mother was made to realize that he who had been born her son was a divine incarnation. Once, as she sat before him, he disappeared, and she saw instead a lingam, a column of pure light. Thinking this to mean that he had discarded his human form, she burst into tears. But soon the lingam vanished, and he reappeared as before. On another occasion, she saw him garlanded and surrounded with serpents like the conventional representations of Shiva. She cried to him, "Send them away. I am frightened of them." After this, she begged him to appear to her henceforth only in his human form. The purpose of the visions had been served. She had realized that the form she knew and loved as her son was as illusory as any other he might assume. In 1920, the health of the mother began to fail. She was able to work less in the service of the ashram and was obliged to rest more. During her illness, Sri Bhagavan attended on her constantly, often sitting up at night with her. In silence and meditation, her understanding matured. The end for the mother came in 1922 on the festival of Bahula Navami, which fell that year on 19th May. Sri Bhagavan and a few others waited on her the whole day without eating. About sunset, a meal was prepared, and Sri Bhagavan asked the others to go and eat, but he himself did not go. In the evening, a group of devotees sat chanting the Vedas beside her, while others invoked the name of Ram. For more than 2 hours she lay there, her chest heaving and her breath coming in loud gasps. And all this while Sri Bhagavan sat beside her, his right hand on her heart and his left on her head. This time there was no question of prolonging life, but only of quieting the mind so that death could be Maha Samadhi, full absorption in the self. At 8 o'clock in the evening, she was finally released from the body. Sri Bhagavan immediately rose, quite cheerful, and said, "Now we can eat. Come along. There is no pollution." There was deep meaning in these words. For a Hindu, death entails ritualistic pollution calling for purification rites, but this had not been a death but a reabsorption. There was no disembodied soul, but perfect union with the self, and therefore no purification rites were needed. Some days later, Sri Bhagavan confirmed this when someone referred to the passing away of the mother. He correctly said to them curtly, "She did not pass away. She was absorbed." Describing the process afterwards, Bhagavan said, "Innate tendencies, vasanas, and the subtle memory of past experiences leading to future possibilities became very active in her. Scene after scene rolled before her in the subtle consciousness, the outer senses having already gone. The soul was passing through a series of experiences, thus avoiding the need for rebirth and making possible union with spirit. The soul was at last disrobed of the subtle sheaths before it, and then reached the final destination, the supreme peace of liberation, from which there is no return to ignorance." Potent as was the aid given by Sri Bhagavan, it was the saintliness of Alagamal, her previous renunciation of pride and attachment, that enabled her to benefit by it. As Bhagavan later said, "Yes, in her case it was a success. On a previous occasion I did the same for Palani Swami when the end was approaching, but it was a failure. He opened his eyes and passed away." He added, however, that it was not a complete failure in the case of Palani Swami, for although the ego was not reabsorbed in the self, the manner of its going was such as to indicate a good rebirth. Often when devotees suffered bereavement, Sri Bhagavan reminded them that it is only the body that dies, and only the I am the body illusion that makes death seem a tragedy. Now, at the time of his own bereavement, he showed no grief whatever. The whole night he and the devotees sat up singing devotional songs. This indifference to his mother's physical death is the real commentary on his prayer at the time of her previous sickness. The question arose of the disposal of the body. There was the testimony of Bhagavan himself that she had been absorbed into the self and not remained to be reborn to the illusion of ego. But some doubt was felt whether the body of a woman saint should be given burial instead of being cremated. Then it was recalled that in 1917, this very point had formed part of a series of questions put to Sri Bhagavan by Ganapati Sastri or Muni and his party, and that he had answered affirmatively, saying, "Since jnana, knowledge, and mukti, deliverance or liberation, do not differ with the difference of sex, the body of a woman saint also need not be burnt. Her body also is the abode of God." In the case of her leaving the ashram, as in that of her joining it, none presumed to ask Sri Bhagavan himself for a decision, nor did he pronounce one. It seems not to have occurred to them that the answer had been given in his prayer of 1914, when he said, "Enfold my mother in thy light, and make her one with thee. What need then for cremation?" Sri Bhagavan stood silently looking on without participating. The body of the mother was interred at the foot of the hill at the southern point, between the Palitirtham tank and the Dakshinamurti Mantapam shrine. Relatives and friends arrived for the ceremony, and large crowds came from the town. Sacred ashes, camphor, incense were thrown into the pit around the body before it was filled up. A stone tomb was constructed, and on it was installed a sacred lingam brought from Benares. Later, a temple was raised on the spot, finally completed in 1949, and known as the Matrubhashwara Temple, the temple of God manifested as the Mother. As the coming of the Mother had marked an epoch in ashram life, so also did her departure. Instead of being checked, the development increased. There were devotees who felt that, as Shakti or creative energy, the Mother's presence was more potent now than before. And on one occasion, Sri Bhagavan said, "Where has she gone? She is here." Nirajananda Swami took up his residence at the foot of the hill near the tomb in a thatched building that was raised there. Sri Bhagavan remained at Skanda Ashram, but almost every day he would come down the hillside to the tomb, about a half an hour's walk away. Then one day, about 6 months later, he went out for a walk, and as he was walking, felt a powerful impulse to go down to the tomb and remain there. When he did not return, the devotees followed him there, and thus was founded Sri Ramana Ashramam. Later, Bhagavan said, "It was not of my own volition that I moved from Skanda Ashram. Something brought me here, and I obeyed. It was not my decision, but the divine will."